Welcome to THA Talks, for free thought and open minds. Hello, I'm Paul Obertelli and you're listening to edition 96 of THA Talks, the alternative podcast show from the UK, bringing you weekly shows and all the best interviews we can get our sticky mitts on. If you'd like to check out our full archive, just go to www.thatalks.com to listen to or to download all our free content. Our talks include news, conspiracies, spirituality, the occult, science, history, art, philosophy, religion and much more. For anyone who'd like to contact us and give some feedback, maybe recommend a guest for the show, you can email us at info@thatalks.com or you can go to our website and check our contact tab there. Also, don't forget you can subscribe to the show via our RSS feed, and you can also find us on iTunes and Stitcher and many other podcast directories out there. Well, hello again, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for tuning in. It's good to be back here on THA Talks as always. But anyway, with that, we will now press on to the other side of London and a surge and a dramaturge, a man called David Parry.
The dream, the impossible dream, to fight the unbeatable foe, to bear with unbearable sorrow, to run where the brave dare not go. What do you think, Mr. Obertelli? Good evening.
That was good. You seem a little bit more chirpy than last week.
Oh, really? I am down officially with the super flu bug, which is killing people left, right and centre. I can't say I feel chirpy, but I do feel belligerent.
Oh, well, it's you sound a bit better. And I guess you're still buzzing from last evening's Extremist Club, which is the last one of the year. But it was a good one.
I felt we had a good session. What did you think?
I enjoyed it. And I mean, any listeners, if you're around London, look out next January is the next one, isn't it?
Last Tuesday of every month, January's the next kickoff.
Yeah, January's the next one. If you're around the London area, check the Facebook page, Extremist Club. It's a good social, lots of interesting guests, and get down to it. Just thought I'd plug it there, David.
Get down and boogie, and you will have an amazingly stretchful time. Thank you for that, Paul.
Cool. Well, this evening's guest, I'm kind of a bit of a passenger for this one because you know her. I know very little about her, but she's a very interesting woman for what you've told me about her. So again, I think you should talk to our listeners about Jillian.
Gosh, I mean, Paul, as I was saying to you off air, it's really hard to know how to describe a moral giant. I mean, there aren't many, let's face it. Jillian Haslam, I count as a good friend of mine. She is an author. She is an activist. She is a great humanitarian and a multimillionairess. She started from incredibly humble origins, has risen to what most people regard as the top of society, and kept the goodness of her human heart. What else can you say is the measure of a human being?
Well, it sounds interesting. Let's get to it.
Let's go, my dear. Good evening, Jillian Haslam, my dear friend, and welcome to THA Talks.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, David, honestly. Thank you.
We've both been looking forward to it. I'm privileged to count you these days as a friend, and I know you're going to overwhelm young Paul Obertelli. Well, the story is marvellous. I mean, I said at the beginning of the recording that you were a moral giant, which I actually believe, and there aren't many of those around nowadays. Perhaps there never were, but let's not get into that. I mean, you're an author, you're a businesswoman, you're an activist when it comes to charitable works, and I want to get into that later. But, tell us about you, Jill, and tell us about your story, how it all began, and how you became a successful businesswoman.
Well, first of all, thank you for all of that, David. I sincerely hope I can live up to the expectations of all your listeners. But how it all began, as far back as I can recall, we had lost 4 siblings already to poverty and malnutrition, all before the ages of 6 months. Twins, a boy and a girl, Kimberly and Alan, and 2 sisters, Carol and Minnie. And then my elder sister came along, and I came along, and my younger sister came along. And, sometimes I feel that, when you're in a queue to inherit something like a house or some kind of wealth, you have these siblings, in a queue to inherit something. But we were actually in a queue of death, so to speak, because it kind of took the lives of one sibling after the other. And I feel very, very lucky to have been spared in a way. But my little sister Vanessa and myself, we basically lived behind people's houses, in their verandas, under their stairs, as is depicted on the cover of my book. And sometimes we were asked to leave, sometimes people felt sorry and fed us, and we just, moved on from pillar to post with nowhere to go, and nothing to eat. And we stayed under the stairs where about 2 feet from us, people used to wash their clothes and use it as a toilet, wash their utensils. There was a tube well, and the place was just ridden with the cockroaches and vermin and whatever else. And my mom just put down a plastic sheet, and that's where we stayed, because my dad had a heart attack twice in a row, and he was taken care of by the Salvation Army. And so we moved on while my mother tried to get help from the Sisters of Charity, and she tried to look after us. She tried to do odd jobs and all of that. And then as we moved on, my father got better, and we moved to our second home, which was in a proper slum, a full-fledged slum, where to just give you an idea, about more than 3,000 people shared 3 toilets. So you can imagine how bad it was.
Yeah.
It was very difficult. There was hardly any electricity, maybe 1 day a week. There was no water. We had to fill water from a tube well right around, the buildings. The room was 8 by 10 feet or whatever. And again, they had a very, very small little drainage system, no sanitary conditions at all. And again, the rats used to come in the night, the cockroaches would come in from under the floor. And that's really the place I lived right up to the time I moved to Delhi, where I moved myself, and then I moved the little ones shortly after, and then my parents too. And I looked after them, and both of them, thankfully, expired in my home. And I'm just grateful to God that He gave me the opportunity to look after them. I didn't have much those days. I had very little, but I am very grateful that I had the opportunity to share with them whatever I had to the very end. And then to take over the 2 little ones. I was already looking after the 2 little ones in Calcutta, but then I took them over even in Delhi, and I've actually helped them to what they are today. And from Delhi, I joined Bank of America. I first joined a very small company. It was an export company, but then I had to leave because of various reasons with men and all of that, where, it was very uncomfortable to work as a girl alone in an office filled with so many men.
Yeah.
And then I left, and I saw this advertisement in a newspaper for an executive secretary to the CEO in Bank of America. That job in India is like working for the President of America. It's that big,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I applied, and I went for the interview. And when I got to the hall, I saw 250 girls seated in a hall, and they gave me a paper and a pencil, and they said, "Take a seat." And I thought, 250, okay, but I'm going to get this job. I need it because I need to bring up the 2 little ones. And so I took a seat, and we went from 250 to 100 to 75 to 50 to 3, and I got selected. And that changed my life. And I'm still in touch with the CEO. He's in America now. He's endorsed my book. And he actually has been instrumental in changing my life and helping me to where I am today, because he mentored me. I did 2 jobs in the bank. I was his executive secretary, but I was also president of the 5 charity networks for Bank of America. And I was flown to America several times. I picked up several awards for the country, brought it back, and he compensated me for all the work, all the hard work I did. Of course, I never went home, ever, because I hardly spent any time at home, because he was relentless when it came to work. But I thank him for everything that he did for me. And then from Bank of America, when I came over to the US to receive those awards, I flew via London, and my dad had told me that all his British papers were in the Home Office and I could get them. So I stopped via London and I acquired those papers. And I went back to India, and he actually gave me the biggest redundancy to help me and my family to leave the country. And that's how we ended up here.
Well, I mean, gosh, I'm overwhelmed already. Third world poverty, forgive me for addressing a country like India. You know I've got this mystical attachment to India.
I do.
You know, the mother of all countries, the mother of all wisdom. But I think in the West, particularly in comfortable Western Europe maybe, we tend to forget what poverty really can mean in the world.
Yes.
I mean, you were born into a context of real stark poverty, Jill. I mean, how did it feel? I mean, try and tell us, you know, as you were growing up, what your reactions were to that stark situation.
Well, David, what my dad tells us to begin with is that India got 1 year, after India got her independence, the British were given 1 year in which to leave the country. And so most of the British, including my dad's sister and all her children, left the country and came back to the UK. Many families decided to stay, and, because they had big houses, lots of, many servants, and, they had a great life. And of course, not to mention the weather.
Yes.
So they all decided to stay there. And then my dad married another lady, and that marriage, of course, for whatever reasons didn't work out. Then he met my mom, and then we came along. But all that while, he said that he found it very, very difficult to find a work. It was very hard. It was as though wherever he went, they kind of didn't want him. And that made life very difficult. So from, for him, it's especially, David, from going from being, a captain in the British Army to being, to having to live under the steps with us sometimes, and, to have to manage with almost nothing, and being in the Salvation Army and sometimes on a bed made of ropes. It was very, very hard for him to deal with that. But he was strong, and, he kept going. And for us, even when we moved to the slum, it just felt, David, we were not even on any scheduled caste or scheduled tribe list in India.
Yeah.
Even the poorest people, or, the minorities were on those lists, but we were not. So it actually felt like, there was a point when I was about 8 years old, and Susan, my little sister, who's now married in Australia, she was sent home from the hospital by a doctor with my mom, and she was given 3 days to live. And just like the other 4, the doctor said, well, she has 3 days to live, you can take her home. And many people came to our little room, to pay their last respects and, to say they're sorry to my mom. But I looked at her and I simply loved her, and I wanted to save her life. But I couldn't help thinking that, why don't we have anyone to help us? It felt as though the world had given up on us, and the country had clearly given up on us, and the doctor too had given up on us. And we were in this little room, which honestly was like the black hole of Calcutta. And we had nothing, no food to eat, no one to turn to, no one to help us, a dying child. And it was very, very hard. I mean, Vanessa and myself used to dance, literally dance, like pretending to be an Indian actor or an actress. We used to dance for these landlords in order to get one corn, the corn on the cob, or to get one biscuit or something like that, because we were so hungry. Every Friday, we used to line up at the top of the road. We used to queue up for the Sisters of Charity, because they used to give all the poor families one bag of powdered milk, one packet of biscuits, and one bag of clothes that were actually donated from people abroad. And there was no time to really measure the clothes, if you know what I mean. So every family just got one bag of clothes. And we used to run home with it. And I still remember, Vanessa and myself still laugh about it, but we used to come home with, I beg your pardon to say this, but we used to come home with knickers that used to start at our chests and end at our ankles.
Yeah.
But we were so proud to wear those knickers, and we used to tour around the whole area because that's how great we felt, because we never had clothes, We used to run to all the tailor shops and pick up all the rags from underneath their tables and bring it home. And my mom used to stitch these patchwork quilts for us and patchwork coats and pillowcases. And, that's really how we managed.
Oh, Jillian. I notice you mention many religious groups, and I caught you quoting Mother Teresa a couple of times.
Yes.
I mean, what is your spiritual or religious, and the two things don't have to be the same, of course, your spiritual or religious background, and do you find that a source of strength, a source of motivation? What's your interaction with that part of your life?
I'm a Protestant, David. I belong to Church of England through my dad, obviously. But my dad has British parents on both sides, and my mom has a British mother, and a British father, and an Armenian mother. But as far as I'm concerned, of course, in our little room we had the pictures up of Jesus and Our Lady. And we used to say our prayers every single night. And even when we were put to boarding school, we said our prayers every single night. But there did come a time, David, when, you question that faith.
Yeah.
And you think, how much more do we endure? How many more children have to die? And, why us? Okay. Why us? There could be a reason for that. But the poverty and the problems just never went away, and it just got harder and harder and harder and harder. And I think my parents, in a way, got so tired. I remember when we were living in a place called Dum Dum, just outside Calcutta, where the twins had just died, and we didn't even have money to buy coffins for them. So my mother got these tea cases, David, and you get these big Darjeeling tea boxes.
Yeah.
So my mother got 2 tea boxes, and I can remember my elder sister Donna, hysterical, saying, don't put them in there, they'll suffocate. And my mother said, they're just sleeping, don't worry about it. And she gave her pillow for them to bury them. And even till, even up to the day my father expired, or my mother, we didn't know where we had buried them, because my father just took them with the villagers and put them somewhere, because we didn't have money for any proper cremation, or we didn't know where the cemetery was or anything. But I think even now, I do sometimes, when I go back to India and I see the abject poverty, and the 3 study centers I run for almost 200 kids, these kids get one little piece of bread once a day, while their parents work as bricklayers all day long in the heat, or the cold.
Yeah.
And when I look at them, I just think of myself, because that's really how we managed. We went from pillar to post asking people for. I remember when we were living under the steps, Vanessa and myself used to run to this man who would, sit on the street corner frying these meat, kind of a meat curry, and these rotis. And we used to stand staring at him. And one day he used to just splash us with hot oil. in the sense like, go away and don't stare at the food because you're upsetting my customers.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to run a little bit and run all the way back. And eventually he used to get so fed up of us that he used to take a piece of paper, put the tortilla wraps, like the rotis in it with some curry, and put it in our hands and say, go away. And if you come back, I'll really burn you this time. But every day we came back and every day he fed us. So we just learned to live that way, you know. But you do question your faith. You do. But I think as far as Mother Teresa is concerned, on many interviews I've been asked about her, and I think she was just one incredible woman whom I should, and I will always admire for what she's done.
Well, my dear friend, you're an incredible woman as well. Let me explore a little. I mean, you ended up a millionairess, a very successful woman, but you still devote so much of your time, you briefly touched upon it a moment ago, to actively involving yourself. I mean, I'm trying to avoid the word charity because you do so much more than charitable works, an underrated activity and statement these days, of course. I mean, you actually put your soul, your heart into making a good effect, a good influence in India. How did all that come about, and what are your plans with all of that?
David, I think all of that came about as far back as I was, 7 or 8 years old. We used to be given, when we were lucky, we used to be given 1 rupee pocket money by my mom or my dad or maybe an aunt or somebody who visited us. And Vanessa and myself used to run to the store, and in those days you used to get a little pack of butter, but the store man used to cut the butter in half and sell it as separately rather than, because no one could afford a whole pack of butter. Mm-hmm. So we used to buy that half pack of butter or a small bottle of jam and a loaf of bread, and we used to race to the aged home, and where all of them used to be sitting outside on the balcony, and we used to put 1 slice of bread on all their laps, 1 piece of butter, or 1 spoon of jam, and we tried to spread the butter because sometimes it was cold, you couldn't spread it out. But we remember those days, and they loved it because they never ever got butter or jam. But we spent all our pocket money on just making them happy because it used to make us happy. And my mother was a very, very charitable person. She would bring a person off the streets who we didn't know, we had never met. He used to be very poor, sometimes not even a shirt on his back, just, one of those lungi kind of things, and no slippers. And my mom used to bring him home and say, well, he's staying with us. And we used to say, Mom, we are all girls. You can't just bring a man off the street. We have only 1 little room. And my mom used to say, no, that's decided. But my dad used to come from work and we used to say, Dad, please, talk to her. She can't keep this man. And my dad used to say, children should be seen and not heard. Your mother's word is final. He stays. Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of people they were. And so I've always wanted to try, David, as well, to the best of my ability, to try and make a change in as many hearts and minds as I can. So last year, 24th of December, I was back in the slums, which I do every year. And when I started speaking to about 12 schools who are brought together, and I asked the kids, do you believe that you can change your life? Not even one hand goes up. But if I tell my story, and if I show them evidence and I say, I lived in the little room just behind you in the slum, I can take you there right now, and I can name the Modi, who's the storeman, I can name the meat man who gave us free bones, I can name the vegetable woman who gave us those bad potatoes and tomatoes to cook. And then at the end of the speech, if I ask them, do you believe now that, you can change your life? Every hand goes up. And I think that's incredible. That's really what I want to do. I want to give them the hope and the inspiration, that in the words of, Christopher Robbins, who said, you have to believe and you have to promise me that, you're just better than you believe, and you're stronger than you seem, and you're smarter than you think. I want them to believe that. And once they do, it's a job well done.
You are mentioning miracles far greater than anything paranormal, but that's an obvious link, of course. Before we get Paul in, who I think is suitably overwhelmed by now, because I know I am once again. A mutual friend of ours, Alan Cox, raconteur, good egg, and psychic phenomena.
Yes.
How did you? I mean, he sort of told me, but he's not told me the whole thing. How did you link up with Alan Cox?
David, someone asked me in India to carry back a parcel for Alan. I think there was some incense sticks or something. And I agreed. And when I came back to the UK early this year, I rang Alan. And again, when I heard his voice, I thought, oh, no, I can't ask him to come to me. I'll have to go to him. So I just said, I'll come to you. And he said, no, Jillian, I can pick it up. And I said, no, Alan, I will come to you. And that's how I met Alan.
I was expecting something a lot more mystical. Well, I think it's time to drag our Obertelli into it. Paul, my dear, are you as overwhelmed as I am? What do you think of this remarkable story and this truly, truly wonderful lady?
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. Welcome to the show, Jillian. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, it's always fascinating hearing these stories. I mean, when you look at India today, I mean, have you seen a lot of change? I mean, I've always imagined that it's obviously things have changed over the years. The modern world's brought change everywhere. Do you see change, or do you still see a lot of the same as you experienced?
Paul, I see. Well, there is a little bit of change, yes, but I don't see that big a change because I still see poverty at its worst over there. And I was actually invited to a BBC show where I was talking to an MP, and they were asking why aid to India should be stopped, because obviously India is now, quite a big economy. But I said, no, I don't believe that, and I don't agree with that, only because the rich over there get richer and the poor get poorer. You have to actually visit there to know how sad and how desperate things really are. It is not, as we see on television. The slums, the children have just multiplied.
Yeah.
And it's still a very, very grave problem, Paul, and it needs to be addressed. But I don't know whether it's corruption or whether it's, just each one for themselves and God for all. But nobody seems to care about the people in desperate need.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be the case everywhere at the moment that there's plenty of money to go around, but only a few people are getting it, and it seems to be the theme all around the world at the moment. And it's escalating obviously at this part of the world as well. The gap's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it is a worry. Yeah, and as you say, because even when you see money going out to these nations to help them and support, it just seems it just goes into the pockets of the people that don't need it anyway. And that's the worry.
Absolutely. And most of their children are being sent abroad to study. That's where the money is going. Most of them are just desperate to leave the country and to, live and work abroad. And it really doesn't matter if another life is lost or another 100 lives are lost. I was looking at some stats recently while writing a proposal, and a minimum of 10 to 20,000 people die every night out of hunger alone. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
Just because of hunger. I mean, how much food do we throw away here? My sister's a teacher, and she's always got tears in her eyes when she says, after the children eat at school, they throw everything away, Jill. They throw it all away.
Yeah.
We used to, when we were in school, we used to look at an eaten sandwich or an apple that had been bitten, and we used to throw our pencils or rubbers in the drain just to pretend that we are picking up our pencils or rubbers and pick up the apple or the sandwich, rush to the toilet, dust it off, wash it off, and share half and half. The children still do that today. And yet the amount of wastage in this part of the world is shocking.
Oh yeah, it's there were stories, I think, that some people were stealing well, it wasn't stealing, it was taking money that the supermarkets were throwing away because it was obviously out of date to sell. It's probably still good food. It's just it's illegal for them to have it on the shelves. And they were telling people off and saying it was theft because people were taking it from the bins. You know, it's some people are so out of touch. And then there was more objections because there was some corporations were putting spikes outside their premises so you wouldn't get people sleeping using the shelter there and stuff. And you see stuff like that. And it just doesn't fill you with hope. People are just so out of touch of what people would need. And you look at the world today and it just seems like we're such an evolved world at the moment. It just seems so stupid that there's some countries that haven't got food. We could feed everyone so easily with just a little adjustment, but it just seems something stopping it. Do you ever get the feeling that there's a conspiracy that people in control somehow want there to be that kind of poverty because somehow they're benefiting from it? Do you ever have that kind of mindset?
Well, I definitely believe that there's inequality, of course, but in India, for example, there are stories about, how a man went back to his village and brought electricity, education, water, etc. And then after some time, he just disappeared because there is that need to keep the people poor. And for reasons best known to politicians and, all of that, and to the government. But even having said that, India is a very rich country, Paul, and there is enough to go around. But I just feel that there is still a lot of selfishness over there, a lot of selfishness because, I see people pull up in, the best of cars outside very posh supermarkets, and there'll be a lady on the footpath, just like my mom was, with her children starving, just sitting there, or an elderly lady with her back bent in two, sitting with a bowl with nothing, or even a man on a piece of board, just a wooden board, and he's dragging himself, and he's covered in flies, but the rich will just cross over him, walk over him, and just go into the supermarket, come out with their bags, and they don't care.
Yeah.
And I think that that's very sad,
I think I hear the same stuff that you in places in Africa, and sometimes I think it could be because as you've experienced, there's been so much poverty in these places. When there is a little bit of money that comes into it and it starts to recover a bit, you get more greed because people are so they're so desperate for the money. When they get it, and maybe that's a kind of thing a nation's got to get through. Get used to having a bit of money before it disbands again. I mean that would be a positive way of looking at it, but it just seems like once you get the money, the greed gene kicks in, as you say, and it's difficult to spread the wealth.
Yeah, it's each one for themselves and God for all. That's how I see it, Paul, when we were living in that one-room place, there was a multi-story building just about 3 feet from us. And, Diwali time, they used to throw these chocolate bombs in front of our house. And the detonation was like being in a war zone. Because obviously we didn't celebrate the festival. So they used to throw these sheets of bombs in front of our house. And I remember holding my little sister Susan and trying to block her ears in my lap. But it was terrible, and the smell of cordite was unbearable. And then even at the time of Holi, they used to throw these water balloons at our chests. And if you get a water balloon thrown at you from 5 or 6 stories high, it hurts. It hurts very badly. And this used to happen every year. But I'm always asked on very many programs, Jill, do you feel, anger that was done and that happened? Or how do you feel? And I honestly, Paul, I feel gratitude and nothing but gratitude for that country, because it was the poorest of the poor who saved our lives. And that's what you have to take away, and what you have to learn to give back. Because, it was that meat man who gave us the bones at the end of the day that nobody bought, that really we made soup and we drank and saved us. The tea man who gave us that little milk, even though it was diluted with water, but I brought it home and fed my sister Susan with it and saved her life, and the vegetable woman by the corner, and so on and so forth. But it's those deeds that are so important to remember, and not what happened, because it just helps you to want to give back in gratitude for what was done for us. I wouldn't be talking to you today if it wasn't for the poorest of the poor out there. No rich people helped us. Not one of them.
It seems to be the way I remember when I was in my kind of late teens. I used to have a job sort of delivering furniture up sort of flights of stairs, and we'd always hope that we get a little bit of a tip, and you'd do it for the really wealthy and you wouldn't get a tip. And it's like you say, the ones that you just wouldn't expect at all of a sudden a £20 note will come up and oh, thank you. And it's amazing how that works, isn't it? It's those the wealthy, or at least the wealthy ones that maybe haven't been like yourself and have had to work hard and climb your way up to get some money. But before I get David back in, I hear through the grapevine you've actually met Hillary Clinton, the Clintons.
Yes, I've met Hillary Clinton, and I've met Bill Clinton. He came to India actually to visit India and Bank of America, the American embassy. We were all actually working together to put his visit together. And that's when I met Bill Clinton, and I met Hillary Clinton, and I've met Donald Trump, and I've met a few of them. Yes.
Oh, right. What's your views on Donald Trump then? Because I mean, a lot of the kind of the right wing crowd, they're kind of, I think it's a bit of fresh air for them. He's kind of just got that kind of says what he thinks kind of attitude. I mean, what were your views on him?
I liked him. I liked him because I thought, yes, of course, I do believe that, he needs to think before he speaks, because, it can hurt a few people, and sometimes it does hurt very much. But honestly, I think he's a person who just says what he thinks and is very straightforward. I don't think he fears anyone. And I think he's out to make a change, but, using his methods. But I really liked him, and he was very, very nice to all of us, all of us who were there. And in fact, Bill Clinton, in fact, when I met Bill Clinton, he kind of put his hand on my shoulder and just gave me a little bit of a press, like a thank you for doing what you did. And we were all, but Donald Trump actually took the time to talk and to answer questions and all of that. So I think, I quite liked him, to be honest.
Well, I think a few of our listeners will like you a bit more now for saying that.
I don't know. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, it seems to be the two. You got Donald Trump, and then the other chap. I can't remember his name now. Do you remember his name, David?
Oh gosh, not offhand. I think that says a lot about him.
Sanders? Is it Sanders or no? I can't remember. Yeah, I've got to stop having this terrible memory of mine on this show. I keep doing it, but it's another guy. The two they're both a bit sort of refreshing and challenging the normal corporate big guys and stuff up there. But while you're here, David, I think I'm ready for you to come back in now. I'm really enjoying it. It's an interesting one.
It's incredible, isn't it? Well, I mean, speaking of the incredible and the remarkable, you made your story into a book called Indian English.
Yes.
And tell us the evolution of that project, Jill, and how well your book is doing. Because, as I say, it's the stuff of legend and lore, so I'm sure I heard the other day it's up for loads of awards, but as I say, tell us about the whole process.
Oh, well, David, it's very, you might not believe me when I tell you this, but I had no reason to be an author. I never ever dreamt of being an author or writing a book. All I did want was a quiet life and easy. I tried to be a little, make my life a little easier after everything that I had been through. And I was just very, very tired when I got married. But suddenly, from nowhere, I just found myself writing this book. I do not know how it happened or why it happened. And I find it very hard to answer because I don't know. I just typed it and sent it off. And from then on, I just think took on a life of its own. And it just went from one person to the other, and then all over the press and all over the, the media.
Mm-hmm.
And right up, to what it is today, with Cyrus and the making of the movie, etc. And wherever I went for my speeches and things like that, every copy just got sold. And like I said, David, it just took on a life of its own. I have no idea how that happened. It's like
I suspect it's because it's such a remarkable story.
I sometimes think, many people who are elderly, they have different views, and they say it's your parents, Jill. It's all the blessings from your parents. You know how elderly people think. And some people say, well, it's just a hidden pair of hands that's doing this. And you have different views, but as far as I'm concerned, I don't know, David. It's like, it's not me. I have never wanted to do something like this, or, for it to even get this far. It's just happened.
I mean, it's spreading far and wide. It's becoming something of a publishing legend, and well-deserved. But, I mean, you've hit upon something else. We have another mutual friend, of course, the Hollywood producer Cyrus Yavner.
Yes.
It strikes me that Hollywood, with no disrespect to Cyrus, it churns out these horror stories all the time of people being nasty and cruel to each other, and that's really the way the world is, and dog eat dog, and I'll tread on you because I've got to, and it doesn't matter anyway.
Yeah.
So, it strikes me that your story, which of course is real life, a true life narrative of actual moral good, it goes against Hollywood. So how on earth did you end up getting a major Hollywood producer involved in all this?
David, if we are to get the message out to the world, unfortunately, maybe I'm wrong, maybe you could help me better with this, but my thought process was, if I need to get, it's, how do I say this? In the words of Maya Angelou, I believe that, my mom always used to say and use her quote that you can be changed by your circumstances, but I refuse to be reduced by it. And I think if that's the message we need to send out to the world, that, irrespective of where you're born and, who you're born to, and, which corner of the world you're born in, and how much poverty you're born into, you can change your life. You can do something about it, just like I have. But if I'm to get that message out, I do believe, David, that Hollywood is the way to go, because they have the ability to get it out there for countries who really and truly need it, who need this important message. That's what I believed.
Well, I suppose I'd better explain to our listeners. I'm hoping to sort of tie Jill up and make her agree for me to do the stage version. So I'm all guns blazing about that, because as we said the other day, I mean, film and theatre are very different animals indeed, and I can see the great moments of drama, the great moments of tragedy, the powerful singular performance. And I think, the Hollywood blockbuster is quite a different beast. It's quite a different animal. And I can equally see how it works there. But I mean, how did you come to meet Cyrus? And, what grabs you two about this project? What magnetizes you two to make it evolve?
How I met Cyrus, to answer your first question, David, I did a radio show. When I met Alan, and he said, "Oh, Jill, I've looked you up." Before I went to hand over his parcel. I didn't say anything on the phone to him. And when I got to his house, he said, "Jill, I've looked you up, and do you mind if I interview you?" And I said, "All right, okay, you've looked me up, that's fine. Yeah, I'll do the show." And then after the show, Alan said that, Cyrus is a good friend, and, can I talk to him about the movie? And I said, we are already in talks with 2 producers, but all right, go ahead. And that's how Cyrus got involved. And then when I spoke to Cyrus, he said, Jillian, I'm so passionate about your story that I really and truly think I can turn this into a blockbuster. I really can. And once I finish with the script or editing the script, I do not know a single star on the planet who will not want to play any role in this movie. But there are a few key messages that need to go out to the world, and I intend to deliver those messages by way of the movie. So that's, where we are with Cyrus, David.
Well, before we get Paul back in, and I think he's the man for the job. I know I'm biased, but I mean, his track record speaks for itself, so I really think he's the man for the job. I mean, oh gosh. And as I say, I'm hoping that we can develop the stage version together because it is an immortal story. It is pure theatre. It's pure drama. I mean, let's talk a little about the show you do with Alan Cox, Inspirational Voices. Now, I've made it very public that I think it's a unique project, and I think it's probably the only genuinely morally and spiritually uplifting radio show I could actually think of, apart from ours, Paul, of course. But, there's a unique energy to that project, and you two are the perfect consummate hosts. And tell us again, Jill, how did that come about, and how did you get into such a perfect broadcasting relationship with Alan?
David, after I did the radio interview and I started chatting to Alan, I just said to Alan that there is so much good we can do if we can get on air and we can call just normal people. I honestly believe, David, that there are very many inspirational people out there who go unnoticed every day. And many of the shows and everything now is about celebrities, in the jungle celebrities, on TV show celebrities, Strictly Come Dancing celebrities. Everywhere is only celebrities. And I think that there are highly inspirational people, highly intelligent people, people who have led incredible lives, who should be given the opportunity to help others. And this can be done. So I said to Alan, why don't we do the show together? And why don't we get on, some of the most inspirational people to share their stories? And Alan said, okay, yeah, let's do it, Jill. And so that's how it began. And so far, we've received an incredible response, David. And it's just about trying to help and change lives from every direction, really. So whether it's through the charities or my speaking or a radio show or anything that I do, I'm just trying to use every tool I can.
Well, we're slowly coming to that time, but I think where we round off, but I think Paul needs to come back in. Paul, I mean, isn't it hard talking to this angel? I mean, what do you want to say, my dear, before we round things up?
Well, it's just, as you said, it's really interesting. How many books have you actually written? Is it just one book you've written?
I've written the one book in English, and I'm just about to complete the second book, which is called The Irrepressible Mind.
Okay, and how long was it, the first book, how long has it been out for?
It's been out since December 2012.
Okay, I mean, I wanted to try and sort of understand something, because you've obviously come from being right at the bottom with no money, and now you've got money, and you've got a lot of celebrities that, like, for example, you've met the Clintons and Trumps. You can't get much bigger company than that. In terms of recognition and so on. Do you find, I mean, that you're getting a lot of people that want to kind of, I'm kind of coming from a conspiracy kind of angle here. Sure. A lot of people that might want to latch it, because obviously they look at you and think, oh, I'm impressed with this lady. She's done very well. Almost like wanting to sort of pull you into their club, so to speak. And I mean, a lot of people believe that some people, they get very successful and maybe they'll become a Freemason or become a part of some other sort of group, get pulled into that and say, right, now you're one of us. We're going to control you now, and give you more money, and you're going to work for us, kind of thing. Have you ever experienced any of that kind of stuff before?
I get it all the time in different ways. Yes. Right. I had one group of people who actually set up an astrology site website using my story and saying how good they were and how they could predict the future, and everything on their site was about my story. I have never met them in my entire life. And yeah, you get it all the time. And you also obviously get a lot of people who actually, threaten you and abuse you. And yeah, they make open threats to you that if you don't give us the money, we'll ruin your reputation online. I've had people go on to every single YouTube video of mine and abuse me and all our teams profusely. I've had people who've blackmailed me. I get it all the time, but it's what you have to deal with, and you have to just be stronger than that, Paul. And if you believe in your mission and you believe in the task at hand or the path that God has set out for you, then you will not let all of that get in the way. You will just understand their psychology and the sadness that lies within and just keep going.
No, it's fascinating stuff. It's been great having you on. I think we're at that time, David, and it's Jillian, is there anything you'd like to let our listeners know about? Would you like to sort of let them know about a way that they can maybe check your future projects or get in touch with you? The floor is yours.
Oh, well, thank you for that. But first of all, gratitude before everything. So thank you, Paul, and thank you, David, for this opportunity. I'm more than grateful for this.
The pleasure's ours.
But of course, to look at all the charity work that we do, you can either go to the website via jillianhaslam.com, or you can go to remediatrustfoundation.com, or to look at the trailers or the movie or the book, it's Indian English, thebook.com. But basically on Google, I just come up right away, so you can find me anywhere. But thank you very much.
Brilliant. David,
it has been a singular and absolute pleasure to have you on the show this evening. Thank you very, very much indeed.
Not at all, David. Thank you. And thank you again, Paul.
Thank you.
And that was Jillian Haslam, Paul. What did you make of that unique story?
I really enjoyed that. She sounded like a really nice lady, fantastic story, and she sounds like someone that deserved to have the success she has, which is always really nice to hear.
The powers that be want our minds and our hearts and our visions to shrink. They want us to look at the dark and to think that the darkness is the reality, the existential truth beneath things, and they're making lots of noise and they're making lots of horrible gestures, but it's to make us look away from the light, because the light is there and it's divine and it's shining and it's much more powerful than the dark, and it always has been. And Jillian's story is a reminder.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. It is, I think there's a lot to be said about being aware of what's going on in the world, but you've also got to sometimes remind yourself why you want things anyway, and that's to be happy and content. So you've got to try and remember to be that way sometimes.
Well, to be aware is very, very important, perhaps more so after recent events, but not to forget what's underneath it all and what makes us human. To be aware of the shortcomings sometimes robs us of a sense of wholeness, and that if we lose our sense of wholeness, then we're losing the battle. So let's not do that.
And I, for one, will be very interested to check out the video that Jillian will be doing and checking out more of her. Yeah, it'll be interesting.
As I say, we're under negotiation for me to take it to the stage. And I can. One of those immortal stories hits British boards. It's incredibly exciting. I can barely wait to see what happens next.
Right, well, that is all we've got time for. Thanks for tuning in again, ladies and gentlemen. Keep telling your friends about the show. Keep linking the show on your social network sites. And more importantly, keep downloading the show. We shall be back again soon with some more exciting guests, as always, as we climb closer and closer to Yule, which will be another interesting one for us. I'm sure we'll have some goodies for you in that time, but I'm not going to talk about Christmas or Yule yet, because we're still in November and I know that winds some people up. But anyway, until the next time, it's been great and we look forward to it.
Chazzy chazzy.